Okay, so we are recording this session and it will be shared after the event. Dean Meisenheimer is with me today. He's going to be your subject matter expert who's going to be demonstrating our Gimmal Records product. Dean's going to be showcasing how to set up approval workflows. The format will be the same as our other sessions. We'll do about 15 to 20 minutes of product demonstration, followed by 10 minutes for your questions. Feel free to post any questions in the Q&A section of your Zoom bar, and we'll be sure to answer those once Dean is finished with the product demonstration. I think that's all I have, Dean, so I'm going to pass things over to you now.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia. Let me get my browser window open here. Okay. So yeah, as Marcia said, today we're going to kind of walk you through how to set up approvals in Gimmal Records. And we're not talking about the setting it up in the life cycle where there's the approval checkbox. We kind of covered that when we talked about life cycles in a previous session and in one of our training tips, tech tips rather. But today we're going to talk about the actual approval workflow, for lack of a better term, where you can actually route approvals through one or more records managers or records users that you have defined in the system, so you can have a more structured process instead of a one-step approval, right? So that'll be our focus today. And as Marcia said, type any questions you have in the Q&A panel, and I'll either hit them as we go or I'll hit them at the end. So everyone should see the three blue pie charts you're all familiar with in Gimmal Records. Yours may not be blue if you have a different theme set up, but mine are easy on the eyes. And so where we're going to start off today is actually in the file plan. So we're going to go to our file plan. I have two different file plans set up for different demo purposes, and I'm going to use the big bucket schedule today. And the first thing you'll notice is out to the right of some of my record categories, there's a check mark. Well, that check mark indicates that there's an approval group set up for this entire category of record classes. Every one of my accounting and finance record classes is going to use the approval process set up on the parent. If I come down here to human resources, which is what we're going to use for the demo, I don't have unique approvers set up for all of human resources, but I do have unique approvers set up for two specific HR record categories. So training and certification and confidential records, you see they both have the check mark. They each have a unique approval group, set of approval groups set up on them. If we wanted to take a look at those, we could simply come in here, click on the pull down, look at approvers, and it's going to come up and show me, hey, HUM09 has a two-stage approval going on. And first level of approval is a group, actually, called first level approvers, and we're going to talk more about groups in a few minutes. And then I have my final disposition approver. So before a record is disposed from HUM09, it has to go through a two-stage approval, not just a one-stage approval. For record classes that do not have approvals set up, the records will appear in any record manager's inbox who has the permission to view that record class. And there are not filters. Again, this is something we talked about previously in a tech tip, that do not have filters preventing them from viewing the records in that record class. So any record class without approvers set up, the records will show up in every record manager's inbox unless there are specific permissions or filters preventing that. All right. So we can kind of quickly see where we have approval groups. Right? How do these come into play? Well, let's go to the dispose area. We're going to go to our inbox. And I'm going to expand my inbox view out a little bit. And let's just sort descending here on our inbox to make it easy. Well, here you see some records from my HUM09 record class, and you recall that's one of the record classes that has unique approvers. How do I see what stage of the approval process that I'm in? Well, it's as easy as coming over here for any of these records, clicking on the pull down, and again, coming to approvals and saying, all right, show me the list of approvals. Well, I can see that in January of this year, Roger was in the first level approvers. He's approved it. It's now at stage 2, which happens to be, I'm part of that group. It's waiting on my approval since I'm the last approver. Once that happens, the record will be queued up and disposed of. We were to look at the life cycle for the record. Here you can see the life cycle. Once the record was marked obsolete, it was declared. That didn't need approval, but phase 2 is a dispose and delete action. It does have that approval checkbox marked in the life cycle, so it does need the approval, and that's going to force it to go through the approval groups set up on HUM09. Okay. Now, what's really cool about this is as things go through the approval workflows, if I were to come in here and look at the audit trail for the record, what you'll see, and actually let's grab one I approved yesterday, so that way we can see a little easier. Here's one I approved just yesterday. It's got a shorter audit trail, that's why I chose this one. You can see that the action dispose and delete was approved, and the approval comment, I approve of this, was put in, and we can see that was done by Roger. So not only is the approval part of the menu show you the information about the approval, but the audit trail for the record shows that as well. And if you keep the audit trail as part of the records archive post-disposal, you now have that as historical information, right? You have that whole approval cycle. So in this inbox here, I'm logged in as Dean. I'm a system administrator. I can see and do everything in the system, all right? Let's go take a look at Roger, because Roger is not. Here you notice we're logged in as Roger Records, okay? Roger is just a user of Gimmal Records, but he's a user, he's a business user that we needed to be involved in the approval of disposition for some record classes, HUM09 being one of those. So you notice by virtue of Roger just being a user, not as many icons up here in his ribbon. He's a lot more restricted in what he can do. He cannot perform any type of records manager activities. We have given him the ability to view HUM09 and to be an approver. And so he can see, he's part of that first level approvers group. He can see records in HUM09 that have hit their expiration date and are awaiting approval. If we were to grab the next one here, the training record from Malone 2021, Roger, again, when he clicks the pull down, not near as many options because he is just a user, but we did give him the ability to approve and submit. I know better than to talk and type. We put in his comment. Roger approves it. It disappears from his inbox. And depending again on the approval groups, it could be disposed of at that point. In this case, we know it's going to go to the next stage in the approval groups, which is that second level approvers groups. Now, if we come in here and we do a quick refresh of my inbox, we're back to looking at Dean's inbox now. If we expand this out and we redo our sort to make it easy, here are our HUM09 records. And let's just drag this over so we can read the title of the record. Here's Malone 2021, the one that Roger just approved. It's now moved to the next stage in the approval flow, which is my inbox because I'm part of the second stage approvers, right? So that's an example of those approval groups in action, right? So how do we set this up? That's the important question, right? How do you make this cool stuff happen? Well, again, I'm logged in as the system administrator, and this next step requires you to be not a records manager, not the global records manager, but a system administrator privilege for Gimmal Records, because that gives you access to this option on the ribbon called Secure. When I go into Secure, this is where all my users and my accounts and my groups are defined for Gimmal Records. So you can see here, here's Dean, and the icons quickly show you at a glance what roles Dean has assigned to him. You see the red box indicates I'm a system administrator. The black box indicates I'm also the global records manager. We come down here to little Roger. You notice Roger only has one box, the blue user box or the aqua user box or whatever color you would like to call that. Roger only has that role. Okay. So you can have users with different roles assigned to them. And the other thing you can have, as we talked about earlier, is I can have groups. And with approvals, it's really kind of nice to use groups versus individuals, because that way the group can be a role, first level approvers, final approvers, and I can just move users in and out of the group as I need to. Because when I create a group, I simply assign members to that group. And so any of my users here that I have defined, I can put into my final disposition approvers group. And my network kind of glitched here for a minute. So we'll let that open up. There we go. And you can see I've got actually 4 users in the group. So when a record goes to final disposition approvers for approval, it's going to show up in all 4 of these users' inboxes. The first one to approve the record, it then moves out of everybody's inbox at once. So let's create a new group. Here's my new user button. If you click the pull down menu, there's an option for create a new group. And so we'll just call this the HR approvers group. You can assign it a level of permission if you like. We'll just make them records managers. And just to make it easy, I'm going to put an email in here for contact. That can be an individual's email. It could be a distribution list or a group email in SharePoint, but this will be the notification where the emails go out to if there are things that need approval. So we created a new group. We've got our HR approvers group, and now we're going to add some users to the group. So I click the pull down, I say add member or group membership. I click add members, and now I can come in here and since I don't feel like typing that again, we're just going to do a quick cut and paste. And now we're going to put in Rebecca. So I've added 2 users to my HR group. So what's nice about that is later on, let's say Rebecca gets promoted, moves to a new role, no longer needs to be in that group, and I want to move Marcia in. I just go edit the group. I don't have to go change every set of approval groups on every record class where I had Rebecca. I just changed the group. So it's a nice thing about using the roles. Okay. And so now the way we can apply this is we're going to go back to our file plan here. And we're going to go back to human resources. And so I showed we have approval groups on HUM09 and HUM010. Let's add one on HUM08. So to do that, we just come out to the right of the record class. We come down and you notice approver's got the little check mark next to it. Try and make it easy. We're going to click on that. And now I can add approvers to HUM08. So we're going to come in here first and we're going to grab first level approvers. So we're going to use that group. And you click add. And now I'm going to click close. And that adds my first level approvers. Now we can say create again and come in here and let's say we're going to grab the HR approvers group and we're going to add them. Now, what if you wanted to add multiple people to the second stage here? Well, I just come back in here and let's say we're going to grab Dean also because he wants to see everything. We're going to add him here as well. Now we click close and you notice stage 1 of the approval is our first level approvers, any user in that group. Stage 2 is going to be anybody in HR approvers, which was Rebecca and Roger, plus Dean, right? So it would show up in all 3 of our inboxes. I could add a third stage if I need to. You can make it as long as you need to, but you know, keep it efficient. Only use what you need to. And let's say we decide we want to come back and you're like, Dean doesn't need to be in there. He doesn't need to see everything. I'm going to click the edit button. We're going to take Dean out. And now we have our two-stage approval with our first level approvers, our HR approvers, and maybe we want to add Dean as a third stage approver if he's really that much of a control freak. We click close. You see the check mark show up here next to HUM08. We now have a two-stage approval set up on HUM08, right? And any records that hit their expiration date in the life cycle that have the approval checkbox clicked, this set of approval groups will now apply, you know, for any records in this record class. All right. So hopefully that was all clear. And if you do have questions, as I mentioned, be sure and type them into the Q&A panel. Now, what if you change your mind and you think, well, you know what? I don't want that on there anymore. Maybe I don't want any of these, and we're going to come in and set up, you know, an approval group at the category level. Well, to get rid of a set of approval groups, it's as easy as coming in here, going back to approvers. You don't have to go through and delete each level. You see this button that says revert to parent? And this is true for life cycles, classification rules, and other things. Revert to parent will simply remove the set of approval groups and revert back to any approvals that are set up at the parent level, the HUM category. So when I confirm that, and now I close, the approvers go away. And if there were approval groups set up on human resources, it would apply to all the children except for ones that had their own unique approval groups. So I could set up a basic approval up here at human resources and say, well, you know what? I'm going to put approvers on human resources, and I'm going to say my HR group is going to approve. Notice the check mark now at human resources. My HR group has to approve disposition for any records in any human resources record class, except for HUM09 and HUM010, because they have their own unique flow. So you can mix and match, and you can combine, and you can do this as efficiently as possible from a maintenance and standpoint. Makes it really easy to apply approvals, consistently across record classes. Using groups for the roles makes it really easy to manage users as folks come and go and roles change and people move around the organizations, because that happens. That's the real world, right? So use roles instead of users where you can. I'm going to come in and just remove that one. So we'll just say again, revert to parent, confirm, close, and I took it off now at the parent level. Okay. If you want to learn more about this and read up a little more about this, you can go to our documentation. So you just, to get to the docs, it's docs.gimmal.com. It's not hard to remember, but you can also click the question mark here in the ribbon bar. That takes you to the Gimmal Records online documentation. All of our documentation is online. And everything you want to know about approvers is in the Records Manager Guide. Underneath building your file plan, record classes, approvers. Okay. And here you can read up and it'll tell you everything you want to know about setting up your approver groups. It'll tell you about using groups versus users and things like that. If you forget where this is, you can always just come up here and say, let me do a quick search on approvers, and it'll find it for you. If you're an on-prem customer, be sure and hit the pull downs here. Select your version of Gimmal Records. And it'll switch the documentation to a specific view for on-prem clients. Okay. That's all we have today for the demo portion, Marcia.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Dean, we do have a few questions, but if anybody still has questions remaining, feel free to post them in the Q&A section as I go through the couple that we do have. So Dean, one that we got in was a question that asked, is there a limit to the number of users in a Gimmal Records group?
There's no technical limit that I'm aware of. There's probably a functional limit. You don't want to have, 30 people in an approval group. But for most approval scenarios where you may have 2, 4, maybe even up to, let's say, the whole department, 6 or 10 people, you could do that, because you're just adding from the list of defined Gimmal Records users. The only caveat, the user has to be set up in Gimmal Records as a user.
Okay. All right. Another question we have is, do you have to be a records manager to be an approver?
You don't, and that kind of goes back to the permissions there. When I showed you Roger's just defined his role as a user. So he only has the ability to go in and do certain actions. One of those happens to be, since he's in the approver groups for HUM09, that automatically gives him access to those records in his inbox. You don't even have, if I recall correctly, you don't even have to go set special permissions up for Roger. By putting him in the approver group, that grants him access to those records in the inbox.
And we have one more.
Okay.
The question is, can I do branching in an approval workflow?
Not today. The process is serial, so it kind of goes from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 if you have a step 3. You can't do send this, Dean's going to approve this, and then if it's this type of record, send it to Marcia. If it's that type of record, send it to Rebecca. You can't do those logical flows today. So it's a little more of a serial process, and that's another reason potentially to use the groups.
Okay, great. We got one more that just came in. Only the knowledge managers can set up a workflow is the question, or does a knowledge specialist have the capability?
Yeah, great question. I don't know the definition in your organization as to how those two things are delineated. It just boils down to what role they've each been assigned in Gimmal Records. To set up a workflow, as long as the users and the groups have already been defined, you should just need to be a records manager to be able to set up the flows, because a records manager or a global records manager can manipulate the file plan.
Okay. All right. I think that's it, unless there's any other last minute. Okay. So that's it, everybody. Thanks for attending today. We certainly hope you enjoyed this. As mentioned earlier, we recorded the session, so I'll be emailing that out to you. So please be on the lookout for that soon. We do offer these sessions twice a month across our Gimmal Records, Gimmal Physical, and Gimmal Discover products. Anybody is free to join any of the sessions, even if you're not currently utilizing that product. Thanks, Dean. Our next session for Gimmal Physical will be June 11th, but for Gimmal Records, July 11th, which will kick off during our Q3 series. Those registration links will be going out soon also. So you'll be able to see the Q3 schedule and register for the upcoming sessions. Otherwise, keep an eye on gimmal.com at events. We also do post all the events out there that you can access. If you have questions or on this topic or would like to suggest an education session for us, please feel free to send those to myself or at success.gimmal.com. That's it. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, everybody.